Hey, what's good, self-direct investors? I hope you're all doing great, and I want to welcome you back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Jordan, and today we're coming at you with This Week in Cannabis News from October 23rd to the 29th. Now, before we jump in, if you enjoy this video or you learned something, please just leave a like on it as it really helps out my channel. And of course, if you want to learn how to take advantage of this generational investment opportunity, subscribe below so that you don't miss any future videos. Then there's plenty of content for you to go back, rewatch, and educate yourself. I try to think of this series as a time capsule. I've tried to put all the news and facts in one place so that you can watch episodes over time to learn about the evolution of the U.S. cannabis industry, identify top U.S. MSOs that you keep seeing pop up that you think will be worth more in the future than they are now market cap-wise, and take advantage whenever you feel ready if you wish to do so. Because if we get a positive rescheduling announcement, the flip should switch just like that. There's going to be a lot of wealth created, so you might as well learn how to take advantage to help yourself, your family, and your community. And again, this is not advice, just perspective from someone who has skin in the game, so you can learn from and potentially make your own decisions. But with that, we got some embarrassing news this week. Kyle Yeager firstly reporting this from Marijuana Moment as a heavily redacted version of the HHS letter to DEA on its cannabis scheduling recommendation has now been published online due to the Freedom of Information Act public interest, an agency information specialist told me this morning. And this is very troubling because there's no reason for this document to be classified or redacted for any reason. This was essentially protocol from HHS doing their job because cannabis clearly has medical value, and all they have to do is signal to the DEA that they ought to reschedule and do the right thing. Now, this is obviously very troubling. So a few comments down here. Obviously, what are they hiding? That's pretty fucked up. Now, for a full view of the letter, connoisseurs.io pointing out the reality. Yeah, they really do not give a fuck at this point. Because if this doesn't piss you off or get you outright fired up to want to do something about this at this point, I don't think anything will. So it's a great comment down here from Mitchell Osak. Talk about petty and unprofessional when the Freedom of Information request was just to either verify the deadline, 90 days apparently that was supposed to be one, or whether the American government's actually working in the best interest of the American people and gonna consider righting this past wrong that is 50 years overdue. And so let me know in the comments what you think. But hey, just had to have a little rant there. Now, here's something that I did not find in the past. Only found now, of course, that's why I'm sharing. But this could be telling of what to expect in the next little while. So again, my apologies, I didn't find this sooner, as this article was published August 30th, 2023. But I want to say maybe there's some legitimacy to it because it's from Marijuana Policy Project, who would be in these discussions and know better than us. And of course, we've been going off that 90-day deadline, which I've tried to post in as many areas as I can, sources for it to make it legit. But get this, major federal policy update. We know the Biden administration recommends rescheduling cannabis on August 30th. That's obviously what made us optimistic, and then everything since then has just come back to normal because obviously Congress is not working for any of us. But here, I found this. Next steps. The DEA is expected to make the final decision on whether federal law will finally acknowledge the reality that cannabis has medical value sometime in 2024. So to anyone watching, I do apologize that I missed this in the past because obviously this perspective would have been very helpful to weigh with, the potential 90-day deadline in December. And hey, maybe we'll still get it. We have no idea. Thing is, it's just out of our control, and all we can do is plan accordingly for our own situation. And so, folks, just remember that while this has been a very tough week, it's not over. These companies are still supplying Americans with legal cannabis in states where cannabis is legal, and states' rights will always supersede federal rights. And so I'm still optimistic. And of course, the main thing we're looking out for is probably next week or next week where we're going to see Ohio and Florida results. We obviously need those two to go our way after all of this nonsense that we're getting back, the fucking redacted Freedom of Information request. And then actually here, this was some good news that we got Monday morning, October 23rd, 6 a.m. news. Published really early so no one's going to see it, I would imagine. But this is from Forbes.com. Now, there's a paywall, so I couldn't access it. However, I'll put the link in the comments. But according to Forbes, Bank of America, NRA, and Mastercard, who was very against cannabis purchases whatsoever, however, like 3 months ago or 4 months ago, are lobbying on cannabis banking now. Fair enough. More promising to hear that than not. But then, of course, the newly elected GOP House Speaker voted against numerous cannabis measures, including banking, research, and legalization. And so whether the Safer Banking Act survives or not, at this point, again, we wanted it for all the social equity applicants that were lied to for fucking years, right? But again, it's not in our control. Congress clearly doesn't give a fuck. They're not going to do their job. And this just leads us to believe that Safer is likely dead in the House, as Mike Johnson is apparently almost too religious for his own good, because as someone who's a born-again Christian, I've read the Bible and I try to find instances where it says you cannot smoke cannabis or smoking cannabis is some sort of a sin. And you can't find it. Instead, there's actually references to oil that you could argue, hey, maybe that was CBD back in the day. We, again, don't know. Just thinking out loud. But the Bible does explicitly say, don't be a drunkard in many instances, or, don't allow yourself to become a slave to your skin and the temptations that come with that. And so, again, it just sucks that someone with a religious view is going to probably twist cannabis into a negative light just because of everything else that comes with his traditional views. But all that to say is that safer is unfortunately likely dead, at least in my view. If you think differently, let me know in the comments. But again, rescheduling was always the holy grail. And what's interesting is that secretly and silently, while this was all ongoing, bipartisan congressional lawmakers file cannabis legalization bill. And this is Nancy Mace's The States Reform Act. And so while this did happen apparently this past week, just going to share this as it apparently happened. Not going to likely mean much, but more here if you wanted to pause to read. To learn more about the bill, obviously this has been in the rounds for the last little while. But on top of that, just wanted to share many, many reasons why it's obviously in Congress's best interest to start working for the American people and keeping some of their campaign promises, because the data doesn't lie. And any state that legalizes cannabis seems to just get further and further ahead in a lot of public health metrics than any state that don't. As for marijuana moment, traffic death rates fell in states that legalized cannabis. Boom, what do you know? New study finds while those that kept criminalization saw a slight increase. No shit, because alcohol. And when you legalize, people usually turn away from alcohol and choose something healthier. And so states that legalized cannabis in 2016 saw meaningful declines in traffic fatalities during the years immediately following the policy change, according to a new study by Courts Advisor. Takeaways were less clear, however, over a longer period of time. That included years the report described as anomalies nationwide. So giving it a bit of time to try and get, a more larger sample size. But ultimately, the paper concludes motor vehicle safety should not be a significant concern for cannabis legalization initiatives, especially when measured against alcohol, because they're just not the same. Boom. So love to see this from another report. And they looked at California, Maine, Massachusetts, and Nevada. Apparently, while the states where it remained illegal and we saw drunk driving go up, Idaho, Indiana, Kansas, Nebraska, and Wyoming. And so fascinating. More stats down here if you wanted to pause to read. Otherwise, full link in the comments. Another one. Again, legalizing cannabis and ending cannabis prohibition is in the best interest of public health if your head is screwed on right, as cell death induction and intracellular vesicle formation in human colorectal cancer cells treated with tetrahydrocannabinol. And so this was another one published October 14th, 2023. I remember covering something similar to this a few months back, but I believe this is a different study. You could pause to read the background, objective, and methods, but just main thing to highlight, again, if it's easier to research this, descheduling is obviously the answer for all of that, but government's not going to give up that control. So in conclusion, THC also, not just tetrahydrocannabinol or CBD, but THC apparently regulated two functional mechanisms, intracellular vesicle formation and cell death. These findings can help to determine, not only can help, these do help determine why we should have descheduled cannabis years ago, and how cannabinoids can be used most effectively to improve the efficacy of cancer treatment. And if that's not enough reason to end prohibition or deschedule for research, we're finding more and more undiscovered compounds. It's like, oh, well, we're finding more that we didn't know existed because we're actually starting to, look in places where we've been hesitant to look, or we've been incentivized to look elsewhere instead of here. But researchers identify previously undiscovered cannabis compounds that give cannabis strains their unique aromas. Can we fucking deschedule already so we can find all the undiscovered compounds and know more about the plant and make, proper decisions based on the facts about the plant? And so I'm not going to spend too much time on this. Just wanted to bring it up because it's, again, another interesting findings that reiterate why we got to end prohibition. Should have done it fucking yesterday or 50 years ago. And we can get much further along in research and learning about the effectiveness and the medical benefits of this plant and any negative effects, if there are, right? And so the big news of this week, I nearly shed a tear once I saw this come out, but lawsuit seeks equal treatment for cannabis businesses. Finally. Like, why didn't you do this in 2021? As the current federal criminalization of safe, regulated intrastate cannabis legal in 38 states for medical, and now I believe it's 24 for adult use. Ohio, I believe, will be 25 if they vote yes on November 7th, but they could be 24. I could be wrong, so let me know in the comments. But no doubt, it's obviously unconstitutional. We know that well by now, and it's almost as unfair to small businesses as forcing them to lock down for 3 months and then expecting them not to go bankrupt while keeping big box stores in check. It's almost like it's all by design, right? But don't call me crazy, as cannabis businesses are unconstitutionally prevented from getting small business loans. Again, discrimination that no other industry in the world near almost faces, or I should say in the US at least. Investments unable to have normal banking relations and subject to discriminatory, predatory 280E taxes. And so, of course, there's more information I invite you to pause to read, but they have filed a lawsuit against US AG Merrick Garland, which might kick the DOJ into gear to actually do something. But all that to say, you can pause to read. I'm going to focus on a little bit more on David Boies, who is the lawyer that they hired in the next article. But the precedent and what they're challenging is this bit here, which is worth reiterating. And so in 2005, The Supreme Court rejected a challenge to the CSA's cannabis prohibitions, but the facts today compel a very different result. As a critical factor in that decision, Gonzalez versus Reich was that the federal government intended to eradicate the market for cannabis nationwide. Quite the pipe dream. Clearly that went well. The court concluded that the federal goal of eliminating commerce in cannabis, combined with the assumption in 2005, again, assumption, not based in reality, that interstate cannabis, state only, could not be differentiated from interstate cannabis, mixing within the states, justified keeping the status quo as it was at that time in 2005. Neither of those facts, however, are true today. Boom, of course. In the 18 years since then, the executive branch has abandoned any intent to eradicate cannabis clearly. They've also abandoned any intent to do their job and change the status quo, sadly, but hopefully, they've still got time to do it. And numerous states have developed regulatory programs for legal cannabis that is not fungible with and is readily distinguished from illicit cannabis, i.e., in 38 states for medical and 23 or 24 for adult use right now, we have legal state programs that are clearly different from the illicit market, functioning properly, improving things and conditions within those states, creating jobs, tax revenue, and let alone, this isn't even part of their argument, but if you introduce a medical or adult use dispensary in a place where it didn't exist before, they see opioid overdoses can go down by as much as 25%. And so I think they have a great case, obviously praying that they will win this and that the American principles will uphold, their rights to be right in this argument. And so anyways, more information here if you wanted to pause to read, otherwise full link in the comments. But so more on the lawyer that they hired as Massachusetts cannabis businesses challenge constitutionality of federal drug laws. And so a bit more on who David Boies is and his powerhouse law firm. He's best known for the high-profile litigation seeking the breakup of Microsoft, the big antitrust case they had in the 2000s or 1999 or 1998. While representing former Vice President Al Gore in the contested 2000 presidential election and defending disgraced movie mogul Harvey Weinstein. And so take from that what you will, but the plaintiffs, their argument, times have changed, they further argue, and so of course you can pause to read if you're interested. Otherwise, full link in the comments. But just wanted to share this old one because I've been praying for a Hail Mary out of left field. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, because I've seen this maybe once or twice every year. It pops up, it's a rumor. No one's confirmed it for me, but if something is prohibited at the federal level, like cannabis, yet at the same time, obviously 38 states for medical, but if we reach the tipping point of 25 states for adult use, which would be half of the states, at some point I've heard that the Supreme Court would almost then have to deem the current federal overhang as unconstitutional. Now, again, that's wishful thinking, obviously wanting an easy answer to right the past wrongs and obviously do the right thing, but just wanted to share that. If anyone knows more, let me know in the comments. All that to say is, hey, I used to be a shit lib and would believe anything that the media reported about Clarence Thomas. However, over the last few years, he's become one of my American heroes in the sense that he stands for the American principles as they are and is a big advocate for getting government out of the way. And we need way, way more of that. And so just to touch on this article, as Clarence Thomas says, federal laws against cannabis may no longer be necessary. And this is from June 28th, 2021. And I remember when this came out, I was even excited and was like, holy shit. Okay, Jordan, you gotta live and learn. Don't get so excited by headlines. But all that to say is the federal government's current approach is a half-in, half-out regime that simultaneously tolerates and forbids local use of cannabis, the conservative Supreme Court justice wrote. And he's got a point. It's insane, right? It's silly. Let alone the fact that it's a blatant violation of one of America's most important principles, that states' rights are supposed to supersede federal rights so federal government doesn't get too big. On top of that, yes, this needs to change because the reality highlights that the status quo is based on political science, not science whatsoever, and it makes America just look like a dumb, walking, talking contradiction when you try and morally posture other countries like Russia for having cannabis prisoners when you have cannabis prisoners. So make it make sense. If you fix this discrepancy, we can be taken a little bit more seriously, right? No shit. And so full link in the comments, but thank you, Justice Clarence Thomas, man, you're an American hero. Please make this happen sooner than later. And with that, from the Dales report, though, just some more sample sizing of the American public and what's coming based on the facts on the ground as opposed to the noise we see in the headlines. From October 26th, the Dales report, 65% of Americans say they'd use medical cannabis for anxiety, pain, and sleep. Boom. And so do you think this means that over time we're going to get more access to cannabis for Americans or less? Probably more. There was only 1,027 surveyed in this survey, or at least participants, I should say, surveyed for this. But some highlights, if you wanted to pause to read. Interesting findings here, but highlighting that more people are likely turning to cannabis, especially from alcohol and other substances, as we see here. 88% of medical cannabis users say it reduced their abuse of these other substances. Massive victory, right? So love that the data speaks for itself. More link in the comments. But with that, Tom Engel, with this one, the new study finds that people who practice yoga after consuming cannabis experience improved mindfulness and Mysticality, okay, well that just almost takes away the legitimacy of this study, indicating that set and setting during cannabis use may significantly impact the therapeutic benefit. So very interesting findings. I think this is obviously self-explanatory for anyone that uses cannabis. I mean, I even use it before I go to jiu-jitsu, and then I'll typically smoke a joint after before I go to bed, and I find even smoking before and after makes me think less when I'm doing jiu-jitsu and allows me to jiu-jitsu more. Again, I could be wrong, but I think anyone that uses cannabis already knows this, right? So this might only be surprising to people that don't. Full link in the comments if you're interested, though, on how this plant just fascinatingly works. But with that, from Ohio, just a reminder, as apparently Ohio Democratic stronghold counties exceeding early voting expectations for election on abortion and cannabis. And so this could be good news in the sense that voters in Democratic stronghold counties are showing up en masse to vote early for the November election on abortion and cannabis, exceeding the already unexpected large turnout from the August special election. And this sounds promising because, of course, based on the polls and everything, we know, especially from Verano moment, this one from 5 days ago, most Ohio lawmakers, and we know the surveys I've featured in last week's videos, looks at the citizens of Ohio, but even lawmakers, Dems and GOP, think voters will legalize cannabis at the ballot, survey says. So I think that's a pretty big takeaway. We obviously want this to happen, so that Florida then can happen afterwards, and that those can be the big dominoes that we need to eventually see some rescheduling, in a positive light for the American people, as opposed to in a negative light, keeping the government in control, which would just be unconstitutional and should make America want to rise up and ride at that point. But with that, some sales. Connoisseurs.io, Missouri cannabis sales are on a $1.4 billion annual run rate. As some might argue, it is a huge opportunity missed by publicly traded MSOs, yet it's very hard to know how states are going to legalize and what their programs are going to allow you to do and not do before you get into the state, right? And so Cannabis, apparently Columbia Care does have one dispensary in the state, and I know many other MSOs do have a lot more dispensaries in Maryland, and so that is going to help as well. But just again, wanted to share this because Missouri is absolutely crushing it, and this is what happens when you don't focus on social equity and focus on providing equal access to opportunity. And whether that's more small mom and pop shops as opposed to MSOs, fair enough. Let Missouri do what they want to do, right? And so a few comments, though, on that from Christopher Norman, our favorite New Jersey source. I would assume Missouri regulatory scheme discourages MSOs from entering the space, maybe making it harder, possibly. But hey, great comment from I Forget down here, or My Investors admin. Even with massive recalls for inspection only, which again highlights that a legal regulated program is working, the sales still went up. So yes, congrats to Missouri. That is a huge takeaway. We do love to see this as well. And so with that, we got an update out of Arkansas from talkbusiness.net as Arkansas medical cannabis sales topped 211 million through September. So we love to see this program continuing to grow as well, up 3.1% compared with the same period in 2022, according to the Arkansas State Department. With average monthly sales of 23.5 million, sales are on track to top the 2022 record of 276.3 million. Of course they are, and every year they're on pace to beat a new record. And so just wanted to share some of the stats here out of Arkansas, and so if you're interested, you can pause to read. Otherwise, full link will be in the comments if you wanted to go through that. Well, we got an update out of Georgia as Botanical Sciences pharmacy partners are the first to dispense medical cannabis through independent pharmacies in the state of Georgia. And so, hey, Georgia has unlocked medical. Love to see it. And so congrats to Botanical Sciences as registered patients gain greater access to a safer, non-addictive medicinal alternative in Georgia to opioids or any other addictive substance. And so we'd love to see that. More information here if you wanted to pause to read. But earlier this month, Botanical Sciences announced its partnership with over 130 exclusive independent pharmacies through the state who will be dispensing medical cannabis to patients in need. And so this is very good for Botanical Sciences. I don't know much about them, but my main focus is, okay, well, we know that Botanical Sciences is in Georgia and selling medical. How about Trulieve, right? And so we did get this release. Trulieve announces progress on first ever pharmacy sales of low THC oil in Georgia, which again, hey, massive congrats to Trulieve for getting this done, as well as Georgia pioneering first U.S. distribution through independent pharmacies to expand access for patients. Main thing, though, is we do not have the same information for Trulieve like Botanical Sciences, as all we really know is that they announced the first state inspection for the sale of low THC medical cannabis products at one of the companies partnering independent pharmacies in Georgia, the first state in the nation to allow pharmacy sales of medical cannabis. Now, what I wish I could get is how many pharmacies has Trulieve partnered with. I don't know the official number yet. So if you do know, let us know in the comments, please. But from what I gather, all we know is that they're selling out of one now, And I imagine they're in the works of getting more and more. And so, of course, you can pause to read. Otherwise, full link in the comments. But do let me know if you know more about how many pharmacies Trulieve has partnered with in Georgia up until now. But with that, some stores being opened as Trulieve opening medical cannabis. Another store in Florida. No doubt making sure that they've got a continued stranglehold on this state for when adult use flips, but they celebrate the grand opening and improves patient access in Florida's North Panhandle, again, to a safer, non-addictive medicinal alternative to whatever else is being sold out on the streets for cheaper prices. And so, of course, you can pause to read for more details about this, but love to see Trulieve, again, focusing on what they can control, opening more shops, while Verano opens MUV Satellite Beach, elevating the company's retail footprint to 72 Florida dispensaries in 135 locations nationwide. So again, Verano, like Trulieve, and like we're going to see Greenthumb next, focusing on getting more stores open in Florida. So again, more details down here if you wanted to pause to read. But I think they're optimistic with over 606,000 residents in this area that it's going to be a nice location with a lot of traffic. While, as I mentioned, Greenthumb plans to open Rise Dispensary in Sun City Center, Florida on October 27th, making it their 10th location in Florida as well. So same idea, trying to get in there early because they know if the ruling is positive on November 8th, then it's only a matter of time until this massive market of 21 million people, 100 plus million tourists a year gets unleashed. That will be massive. And so, of course, you can pause to read if you're interested. Otherwise, full link in the comments. With that, from Cannabis Business Times, is Curaleaf and GTI among 6 conditional consumption lounge licensees awarded in Las Vegas. And so this was something that I think was in the works almost 2 years ago, that since Nevada had legalized for adult use, they're going to introduce consumption lounges. It's taken a long-ass time, but it seems like Curaleaf and GTI are the ones to benefit the most from it. And so, again, didn't want to spend too much time on this. I invite you to read if you're interested, so you can pause to read. Otherwise, I'll bring you down to a little bit more, or you can grab the full link in the comments. But hey, good on Curaleaf and Greenthumb. Well, it took Nevada years to even award licenses. Love to see that in Missouri, Ozark's first cannabis bar offers private club for cannabis fans, already highlighting that Missouri doesn't give a fuck what other states are doing, and they want to be a leading cannabis market in the country. And they already are. Mind you, full link, it is behind a paywall, so that's why I couldn't share more details. But I will put it in the comments if you happen to want to try and read more. But again, love to see Missouri just crushing it and leading the way, while Alabama, unfortunately held up by lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit. Seems the Medical Cannabis Commission wants to issue licenses in December and maybe redo the whole thing. That's what I got out of reading this earlier. Rescinded all licenses awarded from the August 10th meeting. The awards process has been plagued with lawsuits, and so now at the next AMCC meeting on November 27th, the 90 applicants will have an opportunity to present in person and convince the AMCC why they are the best choice for a limited number of medical cannabis licenses. And so the AMCC timeline is aggressive, and commissioners want to award licenses by the end of the year. So that's at least promising. But just goes to show that using lawsuits to delay the shit just seems to be the name of the game if you're a social equity proponent or if you're not getting your way in these states. And fair enough. I mean, hey, if the MSOs are getting their way and you can do this because you want to fight and you can, go for it. But just very annoying for anyone that needs a safer, non-addictive medicinal alternative to cannabis. And then so with that, some state news. Again, marijuana moment from Colorado as Denver hits $500 million. While out of Colorado, the Mile High City hits another milestone as Denver hits $500 million cannabis tax revenue by itself, city data shows. And so honestly thought this would have been a lot higher, but it just goes to show how much pot is being purchased throughout the state of Colorado, I guess, and how spread out that is. But hey, good job, Denver, as it's now tax revenue has exceeded $500 million since 2010. City data released on Monday shows, and I guess this is tax revenue, not all revenue, so that makes a bit more sense. But hey, clearly goes to show that ending cannabis prohibition is a fucking boss move, and Colorado is this far ahead of many other countries. And so more information down here if you wanted to pause to read. But $15 billion in less than a decade, man. And I happen to work with 2 women from Colorado, and they have no idea any of this is going on, and I love educating them about it. And they're like, wow, I had no idea. Mind-blowing on how the benefits have actually helped, and they're like, oh yeah, Colorado's a great place to live. That's why I love it. So with that, from Marijuana Moment, 2 in 3 Kansanians, including a majority of Republicans, that's a surprise, support legalizing and taxing cannabis, new poll finds. And so most respondents also say they're more likely to vote for lawmakers who back medical cannabis legalization. Well, put your money where your mouth is then, and hopefully we'll see some news out of Kansas in the next little while that I can update you on that will see them, moving towards passing some sort of legislation. And so full link in the comments if you want to go through that. Marijuana moment. Regulators seek input on expanding cannabis edibles to include infused drinks, baked goods, and more. And so I believe this was shared from MJ Biz Daily last month or so that regulators wanted to expand the offerings in that category, as the current laws restrict edibles to just non-perishable products. So you only have lozenges, pills, and gummies. That's it seems. And so you've got 60 days for a comment period from the public to let the New Jersey Cannabis Regulatory Commission know that you want more products and you want more legal dispensaries opened so that you can supply the market with legal cannabis, bring in more tax revenue legally, provide more legal jobs, and boost these sales. And so, of course, more information here if you wanted to pause to read. But hey, if you're from New Jersey, definitely put your input there, as that might help. Well, we got this one from Cannabis Business Executive. Write up on how these states are poised to boost the cannabis industry. So don't take it from me or Cannabis Business Executive, but take it from an interview with Hirsch Jain, who's the founder of Ananda Strategy and an expert in government policy. And he's definitely the best source, I think, for anything California and policy related, as he's been a vocal voice for years on Twitter. Mind you, he does touch on how Ohio, Florida, Georgia, New Mexico, Illinois, New Jersey, Michigan, and Mississippi currently are poised to move the industry forward. Again, state-led growth story. Try to ignore the noise as best as you can. And so, not going to go through it all, but I'll read the titles and invite you to pause to read. As Ohio's Midwest cannabis culture is a game changer, and we'll find out on November 7th. Sooner than later. Will Florida's Supreme Court give the people the vote? On November 8th. Going to be next big few weeks, folks. Oh, I'm getting so excited. Is Minnesota leading the normalization of infused beverages? You can pause to read, as there's some interesting loopholes allowing that to prosper in that state. Michigan versus California. Similarities and differences, I guess you could say. Subtle changes are chipping away at the South, as we're seeing Georgia, Alabama, and maybe Mississippi. New Mexico takes a quiet lead in social equity. Actually, I think Mississippi already launched their medical too. Illinois and New Jersey on the move again, expanding the number of stores, I imagine, right? Yeah, that's what it's related to. Thank God. And then what makes these states ripe for an expansion strategy? And so pause to read if you're interested, but definitely some good insight to remember as we go through some very tough weeks with constant shitty noise at the top level, trying to almost make us forget about what's happening on the ground. And then, so for Marijuana Moment, federal agencies fund new cannabis research center to overcome study barriers imposed by prohibition. Yay! Can you deschedule though? So you can just, open the floodgates, please. And so while this does sound promising, as the NIH is calling for the creation of a centralized cannabis research center that's designed to help scientists overcome barriers by studying cannabis under federal prohibition. Great. How much money are you giving for this? Let's try and find out. Okay, doesn't say it yet. Letters of intent are due by March 16th, 2024, when applications will begin to be accepted. Okay, 5 months from now. Why does it have to take so long? Any number yet? Nope, still no number. Why is cannabis in the CSA should have been removed years ago? How much funding? Still no funding. Okay, well, that doesn't really help. How much funding? Still no funding. Okay, well, how much funding? Still no funding. And so from my understanding, we'll provide $1 million in total costs in 2025 to fund the center. $1 million? Is it what, going to fund a fucking room? If that's not pathetic enough, NIDA and NIA will each contribute $100K in co-founding, while NCI will provide $200K in co-founding, so you can, hire 2 scientists? Separately, NCI recently awarded researchers $3.2 million to study the effects of using cannabis while receiving immunotherapy for cancer treatment. And again, maybe I shouldn't be complaining because some money's better than not, but it's almost embarrassing when you just look at how much has been sent overseas to other countries fighting proxy wars when we need this money invested at home so that we can rebuild home, right? It's just nonsense. Anyways, full link in the comments if you want to go through that. This one from Cannabis Business Times, as apparently the 2023 Farm Bill passage could face 1-year delay, according to key U.S. Senator out of Arkansas named John Boozman. And so, folks, I will admit I did not read through this whole article. I just touched on some of the main points, but I figured since it's hemp and cannabis related, it deserves a spot in This Week in Cannabis. So if you do read through it and find something big that I might have missed or any sort of, potential foreshadowing, let us know in the comments. But from what I know, major implications for the future of the hemp industry hinge on specifics of the upcoming Farm Bill, because we know with the passage of the other Farm Bill in 2018 that allowed low concentrated THC hemp to be legal, you could take that low THC hemp and somehow convert it into high THC Delta 8 and Delta 9, right? And so that's what's caused this big issue. And so again, stories here if you wanted to pause to read to go through it all. Again, I will admit I have not read it, but I will try to read through it a bit later. And again, if there's anything really important that we're missing, please let me know in the comments if you happen to go through it. I just haven't had time to read it before starting this video and then going out to do what I have to do later today. And so, sorry. Full link in the comments. With that, MJ Biz Daily, 2/3 of Canadian consumers buy only legal cannabis, survey shows. And so I wanted to share this off of the government data we got from Canada last week that I shared, as it's sort of in line, but this article publishes 66% as opposed to the 70% that our government published, as again, 70% is quite high. And so a survey, though, according to asking Canadians, then Polaro data found that 65% of respondents said they purchase only legal cannabis, which is a 7-point increase since December 2022. So point is, having a legal market does take sales away from the black market, and that's incentive enough to want to end prohibition, right? But highlighting that whether it's 70% like the government says or 65%. So I'm at least happy to share 2 different data points for reference, a survey from Canadians and then of course what the government's trying to say. But interestingly enough, in March 2021, Polaro found that half of consumers bought only legally sourced cannabis, and the Polaro figures were higher than Health Canada's at that time, I believe. According to Health Canada's annual survey, roughly half of consumers always purchased cannabis from a legal source last year, meaningfully lower than Polaro's figure. So the fact that they're different figures does highlight that it's better that we have 2 sources than 1. That number is up from 43% in 2021 and 37% in 2020. And so obviously, no doubt, having the legal adult use market definitely offsets having a black market, and that's incentive to end cannabis prohibition enough. But to highlight, the company polled 2,006 randomly selected adults. And so it's a small sample size still, but main thing is just highlighting that ending cannabis prohibition does speak for itself. And so, of course, more here if you wanted to pause to read. Otherwise, full link in the comments. But yeah, as there was really basically no change or impact besides the fact that probably opioid overdoses are also going down because dispensaries and cannabis is everywhere. And so with that little world tour before we end off from Forbes, is Switzerland to establish first legal cannabis dispensaries in Europe amid pilot project. Now, we've already covered this, but figured I would share it as it's out of Forbes and it's recent, just highlighting to, I guess, Forbes readers that Europe is slowly but surely getting their act together, and Switzerland's health authority has been granted approval to establish the first legal adult use cannabis dispensary in Europe amid a pilot project. Hey, we love to see it. First legal cannabis dispensary in Europe. Many more to come in time, I would imagine. And so as this cannabis will be available to 3,950 adults residing in this area taking part in the pilot program. And so more on this if you wanted to grab the link in the comments. While Malta issues EU's first licenses allowing nonprofit cannabis associations to begin growing cannabis. And so again, another first out of another state that has laxed their cannabis laws. And so it's great to allow nonprofit cannabis associations to begin growing cannabis, but what about individuals? Hey, can an individual in Malta grow cannabis? That ought to be on the list of priorities if it's not already. But to celebrate, officials in Malta have issued the first 2 licenses to not-for-profit associations to legally grow and distribute cannabis. Either way, congrats Malta, as it is an example of the nation's overly cautious first steps toward legal distribution of the drug after becoming the first EU nation to formally end prohibition in 2021. So the good news is the associations are aiming to begin legal distribution in February, 4 months away, according to the Transform Drug Policy Foundation. And so I don't know if individuals can grow in Malta. You'd hope that's the case if prohibition is outright ended. But hey, good to see that they're getting going on the next step of ending prohibition, which would be cannabis associations growing and then selling to members who applied to get access. And so, hey, congrats Malta. Love to see these firsts happening in Europe. And as always, folks, before we head off, some resources that you can tune into and catch up on if you missed or if you just wanted to learn from. First, we got the High Rise podcast from Headset.io. This one's 27 minutes long from October 24th, so it was published on Tuesday, looking at pre-rolls taking off in Canada, cannabis MSOs product and market analysis. Out of the 3, I'm probably going to listen to this one first because I do want to get an idea of, how sales are chugging along during these trying times. But then secondly, of course, link is always in the comments. Secondly, Toby Cannabis, Jesse Redman, and Morgan Paxia do their Higher Exchanges episode 4. And this one featured Hirsch Jain of Ananda Strategy, the same guy that was interviewed for this article. So if you enjoyed what you read here, maybe worth tuning in. This will be the second one I listen to if I do have the time to listen to it. But this one was 1 hour and 10 minutes long, published as of Thursday, October 26th. And looking at the comments, it seems like people did enjoy what they talked about on here. But lastly, MJ Stock Trader with the Friday Cannabis Stock Talk. Seems like this was more of a conversation about the overall market weakness as opposed to just cannabis, which is definitely something considering based on what we're going through. But hey, just seeing this, only God knows, right? And so as much as we want to know and try and inform ourselves as much as possible, it's out of our control, and we're waiting on that rescheduling announcement, whether it's going to be positive or negative, at some point and sometime in the near future. Hopefully not all the way until 2024, and hopefully that deadline is actually a thing and applies. But this one is 51 minutes as of yesterday, October 27th. Link is in the comments as always. But that is it for today's episode, folks. I want to thank you so much for tuning in, and I really hope you got some value out of it. What did you think of the stories mentioned? Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or suggestions, and I'd be happy to address them. But besides that, if you enjoyed this video and you learned something, please just leave a like on it. Subscribe below if you don't want to miss any future videos, and I will catch you on next week for This Week in Cannabis News. Have a great week, everybody. Take care till next time.